It was not just an explosion. It was not just a weapons test. On November 1st, 1952, the United States unleashed a force so overwhelming, so incomprehensible, that it erased an entire island from the surface of the Earth. In the silent waters of the Pacific, at the remote Inutak Atoll, the sky turned into fire, the ocean seemed to recoil, and humanity crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. This was not another atomic bomb like those dropped in World War II. This was something far more powerful. This was the moment America ignited the power of the sun itself, the test known as Operation Ivy, and specifically, the device called Ivy Mike. The world in 1952 was tense, divided, and deeply afraid. Just 3 years earlier, the Soviet Union had successfully tested its own atomic bomb, ending America's short-lived nuclear monopoly and shocking Washington to its core. The balance of power had shifted overnight, and the Cold War was no longer a political standoff. It had become a race for survival. Under the leadership of President Harry S. Truman, the United States made a decision that would define the next decades of global strategy. America would not just match Soviet capabilities. It would surpass them in a way that left no doubt about its technological dominance. Scientists were instructed to move forward with the development of a thermonuclear weapon, a bomb based not on atomic fission, but on nuclear fusion, the same process that powers the stars. Unlike the bombs used in the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which relied on splitting atoms to release energy, the hydrogen bomb would fuse atoms together, releasing exponentially greater destructive force. A theoretical power was almost unimaginable. When completed, Ivy Mike was not a practical battlefield weapon. It was a massive experimental device, weighing over 80 tons and standing as tall as a 2-story building. It required cryogenic systems to keep its fuel in liquid form, making it far too large to be delivered by aircraft. But that was not the point. This was proof of concept. This was a message. In the early hours of that November morning, scientists and military personnel withdrew to safe distances. Cameras were positioned, instruments were calibrated, ships waited far beyond the blast zone. And then, at 7:15 a.m. local time, the device detonated. In a fraction of a second, a blinding white flash consumed the island of Illu's lab. A fireball expanded with terrifying speed, reaching temperatures hotter than the center of the sun. The shockwave ripped across the ocean, flattening everything in its path. A mushroom cloud climbed higher and higher into the atmosphere, eventually towering over 100,000 feet. When the light faded and the ocean mist began to settle, Illu's lab was gone. In its place was a massive crater more than a mile wide and over 160 feet deep. The explosion measured 10.4 megatons, roughly 700 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The strategic implications were immediate and profound. The Soviet Union now faced a reality in which the United States possessed a weapon of almost limitless destructive capability. Although Soviet scientists would soon develop their own thermonuclear device, the detonation of Ivy Mike marked a turning point. The arms race accelerated dramatically. Both superpowers poured resources into building stockpiles of increasingly powerful weapons, leading to the terrifying doctrine of mutually assured destruction. The world entered an era in which peace was maintained not by trust, but by the certainty that any large-scale war would mean annihilation for all sides involved. Operation Ivy did more than demonstrate scientific achievement. It redefined global power. It showed that American industry, research institutions, and military coordination could accomplish what had once seemed impossible. It proved that the United States was willing to push the boundaries of physics itself to secure strategic advantage. But it also raised moral and existential questions that still echo today. How much power is too much? What happens when humanity learns to replicate the energy of stars? And how close did the world come, in those fragile years of the Cold War, to seeing such power used in war rather than in testing? The legacy of Ivy Mike is complex. On one hand, It strengthened deterrence and arguably prevented direct large-scale conflict between nuclear superpowers. On the other, it ushered in decades of fear, air raid drills, fallout shelters, and a persistent awareness that civilization could end in a matter of hours. For many Americans who lived through the 1950s and 1960s, this was not abstract history. It was personal. It was the backdrop of childhoods, military service, and national identity during one of the most uncertain periods in modern history. What happened at Enutak Atoll was more than a scientific milestone. It was a declaration that the United States had entered a new category of power, one measured not just in armies or fleets, but in megatons. The sun had been ignited on Earth, and the world would never look the same again. If you found this deep dive into Cold War history compelling, thank you for watching and for spending your time exploring these powerful moments with us. Your support makes it possible to continue uncovering the events that shaped our world. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss future episodes about the most dramatic and defining events of war and global conflict. There is much more history to uncover, and we look forward to exploring it with you.